Hello, and welcome to the Financial Services Innovation Coalition's video podcast. Um, the Financial Services Innovation Coalition, or FISIC as we call it, is an economic empowerment platform that does research. We run programs and workshops in low income communities to try to help them. And then we also do education on how to advocate for your community. The network is made up of industry innovators, legislators, community groups, and academics who all really want to improve the economy overall by helping all of these communities that have been left out of the economy. So today's topic is the invitation movement, and I'm sure there's some other things that we will talk about. And my guest, somebody that's very, very dear to FSIC, she's just she's one of the real people out there fighting to make things better for everyone in this country. She's involved in so many things. But our guest is Apostle Markita Brooks. Markita is a wife, a mother, a grandmother, an apostle, a prophet, an author, a motivational speaker, and a business coach consultant. She has served as a ministry leader, a business owner, and a business consultant since 2001, probably right out of high school there. Markita is the founder and CEO of Kingdom Wealth LLC, a business coaching and consulting firm dedicated to creating wealth to do the most good. Markita, give us a primer on the work that you're doing and tell us why it's so important to people, to the U.S. and to people in the U.S.
Well, thank you so much, Brady, for having me. I'm excited to be with you here today. And so I want to talk to you about the invitation movement because in 2020, right after the murder of George Floyd, the Lord drew in my heart that it was time for us to heal and come together in this nation. And so he put the invitation movement on my heart so that we would accept his invitation to meet him where he is working, to turn this nation back to himself, one city at a time, through healing, peace, and justice. We saw a lot of challenges after George Floyd's death, murder, so much division in the nation. And we were already in an economically challenging time because of COVID. With all of that, we were kind of in this pressure cooker in the nation. And I have to be honest, I don't think that this year is a whole lot better. We're still really challenged as a nation. Some different things have caused challenges, but we're still divided. People are still suffering economically. We're still having challenges. Businesses are still closing. Ministries are still closing. Communities are suffering. And people are kind of at each other and blaming each other. And what we're seeing is the political pendulum is just swinging back and forth as people become even more extreme politically. And we're seeing that always affects us economically. But rather than working together for solutions, people have been more interested in pointing fingers. And so that reveals to us that we need healing. We need healing, we need reconciliation. But then we also need to address justice. And so this is why the invitation movement is on my heart at this time. I know it's on God's heart. He's been putting in right in front of me. Sure. And so it's important that, I extend this invitation to others as well. It's a different type of movement in that the goal is healing. So the way it's presented, again, is as an invitation. Not that someone has to be involved, not to push it on anyone, not to say this person is right, this group is wrong, but to say let's come together and heal. Let's come to the table and have conversation. Let's listen to each other's stories. Let's learn from each other. Let's heal the identity of groups in the nation so that we can heal the identity of the nation. Because truly the U.S. is made up of lots of different people groups. And as any one of those suffer, the nation itself suffers because there is no American people apart from all of the individual groups that make up the American people. So the American people, to be healed as a whole, must be healed in all those groups, and then all the groups have to reconcile with each other. And the truth is, it's good for the bottom line and for our economy as well.
Exactly. That's one of the main things. And I love this because it is. There's so much I could say about what you're doing, and I'm just really proud to be, in your sphere. That you have your faith, and you have some very strong beliefs, but yet what you're talking about is getting people together and hearing about what they think, as opposed to here's what I believe. You need to believe this too. Now that may come in conversations, but it's not the point. The point really is for people to listen to each other and go, yeah, I never thought about that. I'm tired of being mad about party politics. I'm tired of listening to the news and being just angry all the time. There has to be something better. So this could be the start of it. And my understanding is that you want to start locally. It's almost like a pilot that you're starting, but then have it spread to different areas. And we're hoping that you can do that through our network and some of our other FSIC network members. So t- um, the question I like to ask is, why should people get involved? And what would you say to them to say, if you come, I can't promise anything, but here's what you're likely to get from doing this?
That's a great question. And so, since we start with healing, again, it's healing, peace, and justice. Healing begins with those conversations. Most of the time, people are looking to be heard. The challenge with that is that we're not willing to hear others, usually. Um, and that doesn't work. Communication is a two-way street. And so, if you accept our invitation to connect with this movement, we can certainly assure you that your voice will be heard. And when we're listening, we will be listening. Not listening for a rebuttal, not listening for fact finding and pointing out where you've kind of missed it a little, but listening to hear your heart, your experience, because it's going to shape even our experience. But then others will share their experiences as well. And as we do, our perspective broadens and we really do start to see ourselves as a community. What I've found is that a select few tend to make decisions for everyone. And no matter who you are, your perspective is limited. Is limited to your experiences, is limited to the people who are right around you. And even your view of politics and economics is going to be limited by those factors. If you're in a position of power, if you're writing legislation, if you're enforcing legislation, even that's going to be skewed by your limited experiences. And so when we see bias, when we see prejudice, when we see people who are left behind and falling through the cracks, it's because those who came up with programs and policies, laws, legislation, had no understanding of the real experiences of others who then fall through the cracks. And this is
Yeah.
not good for our whole nation, because the disgruntled people are going to find a way to get their needs met. They're going to find a way to get their voices heard, and it's not always in the most polite or peaceful way.
Right.
And so we've got to address this now.
Yeah, I think, wow, that is very well said. We're seeing that the far left and the far right are the extremes, and they get, elected officials come from those two extremes. And so when it comes to the general elections, uh, us that are kind of center left or in the center don't really have much of a choice of who to vote for. Now, that's partly our fault, but think about your movement if it could get somebody that was just so certain that they were right, and here's somebody and go, I am sick of all of this, but I want to come and really hear what somebody else has to say. And even though I don't agree with them, they're not trying to tell me that's how I need to live or what I need to do. Is this right? Is that what you're trying to do, is get people to say, listen, we've got to do something different for the good of all of us. This is not working what we're doing.
Absolutely. And so we have an event each year called Ecclesia. And this year we had Ecclesia 2026, of course, and it was in Washington, D.C. And we had people there who were conservative. We had people there who were liberal. We had Republicans. We had Democrats. We had all type of ethnic groups: African Americans, Native Americans, white Americans, all types of people, Jewish Americans. Like, all types of groups were there. Just about every type of population was represented: men, women, young, old, like lots of different groups. And
Yeah.
when we came together, we looked at some of the underlying issues in our nation. And one of the activities that I facilitated was, when we do a tug of rope game. You've ever played tug of rope as a young person, even as adults do it too. So we were all adults in the room, some younger, some older. But we played tug of rope for just a moment. But I used it to just really demonstrate how the political extremes have us being pulled in the nation. And we looked at what happens if one side wins. Usually, when there's a real intense tug of war, if one side wins, both sides fall down. And did we really have a winner?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
was there really a winner in this here? But when they started to get closer to each other in the center, they're still pulling from both sides. When they got closer to each other in the center, what we realized is that people were now face to face. They were looking at individuals, and it wasn't just team against team. Now I see you as a person on the other side. But also, what was being created was a standard. That rope became a standard so that those on the right who held their side and those on the left who held their side both were holding people to a standard. It was a line that was not going to be easily crossed. And the reality is, we should be involved in politics, and you should have a stance. You should have opinions because you're a citizen of a nation that is for the people, by the people. However, you need to, as you're holding that stance, connect with someone who has a different and opposing view so that we can really come to that middle ground that's best for our nation. And then we need to hold all of our leaders accountable to the standards that are best for our nation. When we do that, we'll actually have some accountability, and we'll find that it's better for everyone. What we're learning, as people are upping the stakes, this side is extreme, then this side gets more extreme, they're kind of upping the extremes, right? This is what's happening. It's not even good for the parties involved. We're seeing an implosion in the Republican Party and in the Democratic Party because party politics has caused people to stop caring about standards, stop caring even about the platforms. It's about elections. It's about winning. It's about more power, even if it's underhanded. It's about more and more and more and more. And I'll give you an example of this. I'm in Virginia, and our governor is Abigail Spanberger, and she had a particular. We had a special election to vote on redistricting. And everybody was like, what's happening? And the reason I say this is because they were getting advertisements from both Democrats and Republicans about this vote yes, vote no. And both sides had pictures of Dr. King on their advertisements.
You
It
told me
was
about
crazy.
this.
Both sides were saying gerrymandering is wrong. Both sides were saying we need to listen to the people. Both sides were saying the exact same things. And the people were confused. And I remember people asking me, what's going on? And I said, well, basically, this whole vote is about gerrymandering to stop gerrymandering. That was what it was about. The Democrats were like, the Republicans are going to gerrymander. It's going to happen. So we need to beat them to the punch. And we need to do it first. You can't beat gerrymandering by gerrymandering. Like,
Yeah, it's just another chapter of gerrymandering.
It is. And the court of Virginia shut it down. Even though the vote was yes. The court was like, you can't do this. And it was shut down.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that gerrymandering doesn't happen and won't happen. I'm just saying you can't fight fire with fire. And the point is, if we actually did come to the table, we could look at, it's true, people's voices aren't being heard. It's true, redistricting is being used for political means, but one side can't use it against the other side and then say that the other side is bad for doing it and then use it themselves. Like, we've got to instead really take a look at this system that is, it's an old system that we're trying to use in contemporary times when we really need to have the conversations
Exactly.
to update the system.
Exactly. It hasn't changed in decades or a century,
Right.
and yet modern times are so wildly different with social media and the different forms of communication. I like how you said that. It just seems to me, I'll throw my 2 cents in, is that we have a situation where we have two parties and people side with one or the other. And it's not that they want to beat the other party, it's that the leaders of those two parties want you to hate the people of the other party so
Yes.
that they shouldn't even exist. They should not be allowed to vote. They're trying to destroy you. And to me, that's just evil. And both of them do it. And if you listen to a lot of these stump speeches, so the idea that we could maybe get some of those voters to come to whatever event you're going to have, virtual or in person, for the invitation movement, or it's just a series of videos, whatever it is, all of the above, that there's a different choice. Like it's not based on, oh, you're a Republican. Well, you should probably hear about this. It's about, hey, you're a human being. You should hear this, and then try to understand each other instead of trying to tell each other why they're wrong. And that's why I love it so much. So what if you were to say, look forward and say, Brady, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. This is, you can have levels of that. Like this is the best thing that can happen, but if something like this happens, it'd be okay. What will happen in the future as a result of your good works and the people that are involved?
Well, I would like to share our website with you and then kind of go through just a little bit of the information on the homepage to show you the vision for really the next 12 months. Does that sound good?
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
Wonderful. So I'm taking you to invitationmvmt.org. That's the website,
Okay.
invitationmvmt.org. And so you see, again, God has invited all of us. We don't have to agree with each other. We just have to agree to come to the table. Where our focus is healing circles, peace strategies, and justice acts. So this is healing, peace, and justice. Now, when we look at this nation, I was actually at Rededicate 250 in Washington, D.C. I'm going to be
Hmm.
in Washington, D.C. on the 4th of July at another Rededicate 250 event because we're rededicating the nation to God. But the Lord said to me years ago, in 2020, actually, I was in Washington, D.C. at an event where Messianic Rabbi Jonathan Kahn had called the nation together for what he called the return. The very next
Okay.
day, after we had prayed on the National Mall again, the Lord said to me, my people don't know how to return to me because they don't know my standards. We've got, millions of people in this nation and we've got millions of perspectives. And the only way to really agree is to listen to each other and put God at the center. And so the goal here is to plan to come back together in 2027. So he's already told me about 2027. I told you we have an event each year called Ecclesia. In 2027, the focus is the knock at the door. That's what he said to me. 2027, the knock at the door on 2/27/27. February
Okay.
27th,
Okay. Sure.
2027. And I didn't pick that. I was like, you sure, Lord? Like, that's what he wants to do. We'll be in Washington, D.C. That is following an event that I didn't know about when he told me this. I had to go back and look it up. There's an event that happens the week before this called the National Religious Broadcasters Convention. And it's
Yeah.
usually in
Yeah.
Tennessee.
You told me
Yeah.
about.
It's usually in Tennessee because he put Tennessee on my heart. He said, but it's not going to be in Tennessee. But he put Tennessee on my heart. So I said, what's in Tennessee? Oh, NRB is in Tennessee, but not next year. Next year's in Washington, D.C. Now, why
Okay.
is this important? Because what we're talking about here is all these opinions, all these different things happening. And what the Lord said is he wants us to kind of get off our soapboxes, stop flooding the airwaves with all of our messages, and focus really on being one nation under God. If we can give him airtime, which means being careful what comes out of our mouths, making sure that we're not speaking ill of other people. We haven't walked in their shoes. We don't know why they believe as they believe. We don't know why they think as they think. But to really be in a position where we're speaking words that bring life, words that are positive, words that invite people in, so that we could actually be one nation. And this is important because, like I said, I was at Rededicate 250 on May 17th. I was there on the National Mall, and there were people standing outside, and they were going, it's not right to declare a national religion. You're forcing Christianity on people. And I wanted to speak to them so badly, but the people with me were like, that's not safe, because they were very angry. They were angry. And they said, don't do it. You need to pray right now. You need to pray. Don't go talk to them right now. Just pray. But what I wanted to tell them is that rededicating the nation to the God of the Bible, which of course we know a lot of the Constitution was influenced by the Bible. A lot of the original forefathers were Christians. does not mean that we take away people's right to religion. What it actually does is it supports that right. Because not every group believes that everybody should believe as they want to believe. And there are certain groups that if we,
Are you sure?
I'm certain if we stand back and we're quiet, they will, force people to believe as they believe, in aggression. And that's not what God wants at all. This is a choice. Faith is a choice. Every decision we make in our life is a choice, and He's given us free will. And so the goal is that those who do believe in the God of the Bible would start to act like it. Because as a ministry leader, I want to apologize on behalf of Christians all over the world and throughout history who have done things in Jesus' name and in God's name that was not in their name. It just wasn't. It was ugly. It was divisive. It was sometimes aggressive. Just sometimes even just disastrous for whole people groups. That wasn't God. That wasn't the God of the Bible. The goal really is for us to connect, which means that this should not just be even Christians. We should be able to connect with Buddhists. We should be able to connect with Muslims, because the heart of the God of the Bible is love. And if I really get back to that, then I can share His message of love, and we can be one nation under God, regardless of how you worship. We can actually receive and connect with each other and live in this nation together, which is what this nation is designed to do if we come together. So, Ecclesia 2027, following NRB, hopefully we can start with the people who believe in the God of the Bible, so they can, like I said, we can actually behave like that. And then if we behave that way, we can reach across to people who believe in other ways. This also would include reaching across the aisle politically, because what the Lord told me in 2016, He said, I want my people to come out of the right and the left into the aisle and meet me at the altar. Now that's a position. It doesn't mean you don't have a political position. It means that your political position is not more important than being an American. And if you believe in God, it's not more important than believing in God. Instead, you are willing to work with other people who are not like you, and to listen to them, and to hear their perspective, and to work for justice for them, so that we really can be one solid nation. And so next year, I want to encourage people to pray about and consider connecting with us in Washington, D.C. on 2/27/27. But before then, what we're going to do, and that's why I'm going to take you down even further, just now that I've shared my spiel. Before that, what I would encourage you to do is to pray about actually bringing me into your city, your university, your town, your organization, for healing, peace, and then together to work for justice. And so I actually facilitate healing circles. And again, this is for various people groups. This is not just any particular group. We all need healing. And if we're willing to listen to each other, we can experience it. And so I facilitate these healing circles, especially in groups where people need to hear each other but are having a hard time doing that. So if there's been aggression, if there's been, even violence, if there's division, if both parties or all parties, because sometimes it's more than two, are willing to come together, we can have a healing circle. And the healing circle happens before we get to the peace strategies. See, peace strategies are basically how we decide we're going to live. Let's say you've got a city that's just, torn apart in violence and oppression and aggression. The healing circle comes together to deal with the heart issues. But then the peace strategy is like, hey, how are we going to live in this community together? Then justice goes to legislation, and that's where physics comes in. Because now we can create legislation that includes all these stories we've heard, all these perspectives we've heard, all these agreements we've made to live together. Now we can write legislation that's going to be inclusive, and people will really be invited to the table to make the laws and enforce the laws that affect their lives.
That's great. I want to make a point here so that it's clear, is that FSIC is not a religious organization, but we work with a lot of religious organizations because a lot of people believe in God, how they believe in God, and we're not going to limit ourselves who we talk to because their beliefs may be. And I was raised a Christian. I don't practice religion a lot, but I love to hear about it and everything because in the good way, where people's telling me, here's what I believe. And here's my point. There was half the people or half the news in this country were trying to make that event in DC sound really awesome. But there was half of it, maybe my numbers are up, that wanted to make it sound like the worst thing that had ever happened. And I knew you, and I know where your heart is. And I knew you went there to celebrate and to be there with people that were like-minded, and that you didn't, you want to engage with the people that think differently, but they're not in a place where they're going to accept that.
Right.
So we're trying to do like a peace circle to come together instead of say a town hall where most of the board is one party or the other, conservative or liberal, and things don't really get done that way.
Right.
Versus imagining if in a peace circle or a peace meeting we come together and the idea is to do something that's just, that will benefit us all, not based on the tenets of politics, but based on the tenets of what human beings need. All human beings, not just this neighborhood or that church. Am I close?
Absolutely. And I want to point out that, the freedom of religion in the United States that we celebrate means that you can have your faith, whatever it is, and you should be able to be proud of it. You should be able to operate in it, but our freedom should never, conflict with other people's freedoms. So my freedom shouldn't conflict with your freedom. In fact, my freedom should celebrate your freedom. That's how that should work.
That's what I believe. Yeah,
exactly. And we see that faith has been a very important part of this nation, and not just one, narrow view of faith, but many faiths, many expressions of faith have been so important in this nation. But what we found, because sometimes people of faith can be jerks, let's just be honest, and they do it in the name of their faith, that some people have said we need to just get rid of faith completely. Because some people are just throwing their faith on others. They're using their faith as an opportunity and as an excuse to behave badly. All these different things. But that was just a misuse of faith. We can't get rid of something because it was misused. We've got to go back to its original intent. And what we see is that faith can be a great uniting factor. Like, for example, when Dr. King was moving in the civil rights movement, when in the work that he did, people point out that he was a civil rights leader, but he was a pastor first. He's a pastor. He was a minister of the Bible, of the gospel. But when he was fighting, in Florida and Alabama, for civil rights, rabbis were locking arms with him and walking across the bridge. The largest number of rabbis to ever be arrested in U.S. history, they were locked arms with Dr. King. That's when they got arrested. Was when they were locked arms with Dr. King.
I didn't know
that.
Yeah.
They were in St. Augustine, Florida, and they locked arms with Dr. King, and they and Dr. King all got arrested together. And when you look later on, initially you see, the civil rights movement, under Dr. King, and then you see the Nation of Islam, and it was the way it was working under people like Malcolm X. Later on in life, you start to see Dr. King, Malcolm X, they start to talk, they start to work together, because, there was this opposing, they're different. Yeah. And then you start to see as they get older, they get a little more mature, they start to have these conversations, they start to strategize together. And the point that I'm making is that none of these movements were ever successful until people came together across those lines that would have divided them. Until the rabbis joined, until he started having conversations with Malcolm X, and until those things started to happen, you didn't know about the civil rights movement, the things that Dr. King was doing. Nobody knew about it until the lines were crossed and people started to unite. And this is why healing comes first. Because as long as I think you are the enemy, and as long as I think that I won't make any progress unless I take you out, we won't make any progress. We've got to be at a place where we're able to come together. And so this is what I facilitate in the invitation movement, but it's also what I do in the work that I do. You mentioned Kingdom Wealth LLC. And so Kingdom Wealth, my Bible-based business coaching program, has been in existence since 2017. But the aspect of the coaching that I do that my clients like the most is when I'm actually dealing with the mindset and the heart motivation of business owners. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What's blocking you? What's sabotaging you from inside you? And as I'm doing that work, is deep soul work. As we're doing that deep soul work, they are unlocked and able to go to the next level. And so as they were sharing with me, like, that's the most important thing you do. And when I interviewed all of them, they all said the same thing. Like, that was the most important thing. It was the best thing. It was the greatest thing. So now I'm focusing on that in Kingdom Wealth. So in Kingdom Wealth, there is the Impact Healing Movement. And that's for profit. Invitation Movement is nonprofit. It's a nonprofit movement. But the Impact Healing Movement is actually where all of my coaching is now. I'm coaching people in healing. I'm doing healing circles in my business coaching. I'm doing intensive with business owners. Why? Because we've got to get out of our own way in order to do anything of merit. We've got to deal with what's going on inside of us. And so it's not just relegated to the religious realm, though I am a religious leader and I'm going to be open about my faith all the time. I don't need you to share my faith for us to have the conversation. In fact, when we differ, the truth is we're able to really broaden each other. We're able to help each other grow when we differ. If you're around people that are like you all the time, you're not being stretched. We got to connect with people who are not like us so that we grow and we become better. Together, we improve each other. And if we would do this in our nation, which honestly, our nation is designed for that. You think it's a coincidence that we got people from all over the world in this nation? No, we're designed.
And that should be a strength.
It's our strength, exactly. But when we start to polarize and we demonize this group and that group, we have so many divisions. When people are capitalizing on those divisions, even monetizing them, I got to be honest with you guys, people are getting rich off the fact that people hate each other in this nation. If we would realize that and say, no, I'm not going to be a part of that. I'm not going to be a part of that because I see that it's destructive. If we would come together, we would actually do so much good and address so many issues and challenges in our nation.
Yeah, I love that notion. Last year, I'm kind of a dreamer, and I understand these things are not likely in my lifetime, but I always believe in never giving up and never losing hope that the world can be a better place. And there's plenty of areas in the world where good things are happening. We just don't hear about them because there is, in this country particularly, there's so much hatred back and forth between the two tribes. And I just would, I had this crazy thought that, could you imagine how far our society would go in terms of being good and offering a lot more people a much better quality of life and better health and better financial stability if we didn't have these two bad actors having us hate each other? Just imagine if we could get together on some things. Yeah. Because right now, everything gets politicized. The COVID vaccine or the COVID should have been something that brought our country together, where we were like, hey, this could wipe us all out. We really need to work together. But because of the political climate, it didn't. And hundreds of thousands of people died that didn't have to. But imagine if we had worked together on that, or if enough people had gone to your peace meetings or your peace circles. A lot more people would be alive today. So it's literally, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but it's life or death. A lot of these things, it's life or death. And so before we go, I have one question I like to ask on my guests, and that is, what issues are most important to your generation? Because I think that you're in the generation that is now coming into power. I'm not going to ask your age or anything like that, but I see you as one of the people that is a leader in this day and age, and the things that you do are going to have a profound impact, and people like you, on the country and on people and on our society. And Justice, we'll talk about, I guess we'll save that for last. What are issues are most important to your generation, and why?
Well, I'm a mother of adult children. My kids are grown. And so, like, I'm looking to them as to like, what their generation is bringing in. Like, so for my generation, I'm very honest. I see it very clearly. Economics is what my generation cares about. What's happening with the money? What's the bottom line? And this is why I let people know, hey, these issues of the heart, these issues of relationship, they affect the bottom line. They affect the economy. Like, I know you're looking at, what's happening with the market. I know you're watching these things. Guess what? All of those are results of relationships. All of those are results of the division or the unity. Like, it's all connected. And so I have to speak that way because my generation cares about the economics. What I have found in the generation of young people who are coming up, my kids are 21 and 27, in their generation, they care about what's real. And it's interesting because they have a digital life. Like, their life is digital, but they care about, is this real? Is that true? Is that factual? Because they're getting presented with falsehoods and things that aren't real all the time. But the challenge is it has made them guarded. They are much more guarded than my generation. They are much more looking for a scam or a deception. Like, they're looking, for those things. They expect them so much more than my generation expected. My generation didn't expect that. So what we have to do, in my generation, we've got to realize these things affect the bottom line. And as we're bringing in the next generation, we have to help them to see that we're authentic, because we have been less than authentic. Let me just say it that way. And they have peeped that card, and they are not trying to hear that. Like, they've seen all the little smoke and mirrors and all that. They've seen all that, and they're not trying to go for that anymore. And so we've got to be at a place where we get, our healing so we can be authentic. And then we can unite, because when they see us coming together, they see something real. When we're talking about each other, they want to, if I'm speaking about the other group, now they want to know about the other group. See, we think in my generation that, I'm going to say the other group is so bad, you're going to come to me. No, now that generation is looking at us and so why do you have to put them down? Why do you have to tear them down? And so now they want to find out what's going on with that other group that you spent so much time and energy to tear them down. See, most people in my generation don't realize that they're doing that. They think that they're getting the youth's attention. They're not. They're really pushing them away. They're repelling them with all this ugliness because they can't stand it, And so we've got to, when we can be genuine, we'll see them come around. And this is why I do what I do. I want to share this when I'm speaking on podcasts, when I'm speaking in person. I also want to help people to build chapters of the invitation movement right where they are, in their community, in their city, in their university, so that I can help them to heal others too. We can facilitate healing circles and operate those peace strategies. And then as we do, FSIC comes in, drafts legislation, supports legislation, tells us, what we really should be looking for in leaders. Like, hey, if this is what you care about, we got to hold those leaders accountable, bringing us together, in political organizations that are nonpartisan but affect partisan politics. So that's what you got to do. You got to be nonpartisan in your political moves, but affect the partisan politics so that what needs to happen actually does happen.
Oh, now I'm just confused. How in the world am I supposed to? I know that you can do that, and working with us, we're on the policy side. It's kind of boring. It's very technical. And that's why I'm glad that we have folks like you that really work in the communities. You're so very down to earth. And then you throw something like that out there. Can you say that again? Because I think it's important.
Yes. We have to be nonpartisan, affecting partisan politics. And remember, I said it earlier, you should have political views. And when you vote, you're going to have Democrat, Republican, and you're going to have other groups. There are other groups, you guys. There are other groups. Just want to point that out. And that's important, and we realize that too. There are other political parties. But whatever decisions you make, you should be holding everybody accountable. If you are, what they call a yellow dog Democrat, meaning if a yellow dog is running as a Democrat, you're voting for him, then you're not going to be able to hold the Democratic Party accountable because they know they have your vote no matter what. If you're a staunch Republican, right? It's not good. If you're a staunch Republican, you're like, no matter who is running on a Republican ticket, I believe we need to be loyal to the party and we're going to stand by them. Guess what? They can behave badly And they know you're going to stand right there with them, and you're not going to hold them to account for what they promised to do, what they're accountable to do as a leader, what the Constitution says they're supposed to do. They know you're not going to say anything because you care more about party politics than about this nation. We got to be Americans first. We've got to care more about, the foundation of our nation, Constitution, and all the groups that it protects, which is every group, and hold everybody accountable. If you love your party, clean it up from the inside. Don't make them think that they've got to vote no matter what.
Everybody in this country deserves to have an opinion and to vote, and to hate them for what your leaders are telling you is wrong, and that the other side is trying to take everything that you hold dear. It just isn't happening. This country's so much older than one politician.
Right.
And I'm not going to name any names, but if you listen to their stump speeches and stuff, it's not about, I'm going to do this and this is how I'm going to do it, and you can agree or disagree. No, it's all about the Democrats this or the Republicans this. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with the peace circles, and to participate in some. And I really hope that as we talked about in our task force meeting, that we were going to have a focus group, because there's a big election coming up and we think we know the way it's going to go. But if it does go that way, we need to prepare those politicians to do what we need them to do, and not what they want to do to stay in power. And your solution is elegant, and it's getting people together to think about things besides that. We're so locked into this one way of thinking because we've been trained by the bad actors in these parties and the media and everything. So it's a different approach. I think there's a lot of people that will roll their eyes at it, but I think in the end, there's going to be enough people that are just so sick of the norm. And how do you hate so many of your neighbors that you don't even know? So we're gonna bring it. So let's take a little break, and I've got an extra question I want to ask you when we come back. So, hey, welcome back, Markita. So I've been struggling with the concept of justice in this country because we seem to have so little of it. The justices in the Supreme Court are making some decisions that are justice for a few and not the many, I believe. I don't want to get into that. But what I'm most curious about is, I know you've done a lot of work on this. What is your idea of justice? And if you can, give us an example of something just that has happened in the country, whether it's in the last 10 years or the last year or something like that.
It's a great question. And I do agree with you. We kind of struggle in the area of justice. And the reason being is because the system, the laws, execution of the laws, those who are then held accountable to the laws, and the punishment for breaking the laws, all of that is done by flawed people. Where none of us are perfect.
Right, we're all flawed. Let's be clear.
All flawed. Yeah, that's what I mean. Every person is flawed. And so the fact that the system requires humans means there's going to be challenges. But we would decrease the injustices, like that percentage of that which is unjust, and we'll talk about what unjust means in a minute. We could decrease that if we had diverse groups brought to the table. Because and diversity is so important. We've got this buzz phrase of DEI, and we're getting rid of DEI, so everything will be equal. But the reality is, getting rid of DEI did not make things equal. It actually just told people who didn't want things to be equal that it was okay for them to go back and be a bad actor again. That's what it did. It actually opened the door for persecution for minority groups. Like it did not do what it was promised to do.
Not at all.
It did the exact opposite. It did the exact opposite. And that's because
it for a few, but most,
right.
It didn't. Getting rid of DEI has not harmed the people it was intended to help. It harmed a couple that had contracts, but that's a whole nother podcast.
But the point though, and this is the reality, the people, minorities were not involved in that process.
Right.
And so you're going to have a process that is not going to be advantageous to any group that's not involved in the planning of the process. So for me, that's where injustice starts. When people are not brought to the table, but they'll be affected by the decisions made at the table, you can guarantee that the outcome is going to be unjust because it's
Wow.
unequal. The representation at the beginning is flawed. And for any of us to think that we can represent the perspectives and the life experiences of people who are not like us is just plain arrogant and ignorant. We cannot. I don't care who you are. I don't care what type of life you've lived. Like I am multi-ethnic. I've done so many things in my life. I'm connected to this group and that group, and I still don't think that I could represent the views of all Americans. I know I couldn't. So we've got to realize that if we're not bringing other people to the table who are not like us, we're making it easy on ourselves, but we're making it hard not just for the people who we didn't bring to the table, but we're actually excluding all the groups they represent. And it actually negatively affects America. We're seeing issues in industries in the United States that have been affected by the removal of DEI because there are people who were ousted from the jobs that they got that did not come through DEI. Because now people had an opportunity to get rid of people they kind of wanted to get rid of. They didn't want to have to be inclusive. They resented having to do it. And now I don't have to. Get out of here. But those people are essential. And I know this because the challenges we're seeing throughout the nation are a result of people not being in the positions that they once were in. And now those positions are vacant and we're not able to fill them with the people that should be there because people are afraid that it will be DEI if they bring in minorities. What?
That's purposeful.
It has done the wrong thing. Exactly. And we've got to see how this injustice started. It started by everybody not being at the table.
Yep.
That
The
is
formation, the rules, the structure, what is possible. A perfect example is the PPP loans, Paycheck Protection Program, right during COVID. And the people that designed the program and the documents that were needed obviously didn't run small businesses because most of the businesses that needed those loans were the 1 and 2 and 10 people businesses, but they didn't have the documents, the IRS this form and the IRS that form and all these things because they're running a business. They're an expert at plumbing, but they're not that great at paperwork. And so I think it was 94% of African American businesses got turned down because they were certainly not involved. And we think that the SBA can possibly be one of the more biased groups because they wouldn't even listen to us. We tried to tell them that if you do it this way, FSIC is always, writing letters and trying to contact these agencies, and it's like they just want to do their thing because it's the path of least resistance. They don't want to bother with doing it this way. So sorry, I'm off on a little tangent, but
no, that's exactly right.
I'll turn it back over to you.
The path of least resistance leads to injustice. And that's what we're seeing throughout our nation. It takes work. If we want justice, honestly, remember we were talking about that authenticity and integrity. Yeah. If we actually want it, we've got to bring representatives of all groups to the table because we'll find out where we've missed it, where we've gone wrong, where we haven't thought through this enough. We will be able to predict how it's going to flow in the long run. Like right. It's so important that we get that. And I would say this for the nation. If you pay attention to minority populations and what's happening in minority groups, you'll see the trajectory of the nation. What's happening in minority populations reveals what's going to happen in the nationwide 10 years, 15 years down the road. And people always think it's going to be isolated to the lower socioeconomic groups. It's going to be isolated to immigrant groups. It's going to be it's never isolated. It's never isolated. Those groups just show us what's coming. And when we ignore it and we say that's not our problem, it's just a small few. It's just this group. Oh, it's just that group. Oh, they brought it on themselves. Every time we do that, we see it hitting everyone. We did that with drug epidemics. Oh, it's just those in poverty. Now there's no one in America who doesn't have a family member who has not been addicted to drugs. There's not one American who can say we don't have a family member who's been addicted to drugs. Now it has affected the whole country, and now we see it as an epidemic, but it was an epidemic when it was in certain
Oh, it was
groups.
highly criminal, super criminals
Oh, people
back
were
during
going
the
to jail for
traffic
life.
for black folks during that time, the war, the beginning of the war on drugs. Yeah.
It was terrible. And that is bias. That's not just. That's not just when a person goes to jail for more time in possession of crack than they go to jail for cocaine. It's the same drug. It does the same thing
Mm.
to communities. But we saw they were in the hands of different people. And if the laws were different for the two most similar drugs you can get.
No,
But
and let's be clear, during that time, a lot of white people did cocaine. And that was that's the other side of it you're talking about. They have these really harsh and draconian things, rules and penalties for people that did crack because
right,
that was prevalent in the minority communities,
right.
but they didn't have the commensurate level saying it's just as bad. And you can't tell me that's intolerance that that's not biased
It
or
is.
just flat out racist that those things came about. And it really devastated communities. I lived in one of those communities, Deanwood in Washington, D.C., and to hear the stories about they used to have people would go around and deliver fruits and vegetables, and they had an amusement park and a racetrack and all of these things. And then the crack epidemic came and it wiped out so many young
Yeah.
black men and women went to jail, and it's been recovering, but then it got hit with COVID again, and it's just like generations were hurt because of the policies that led to the quote unquote war on drugs.
Yeah.
So
Because the
yeah,
truth is that's not how you address drugs. You have to address what's happening inside first. So now that we've got
right.
suburban young people addicted to drugs, now we're dealing with drugs with compassion. Now we're saying be compassionate. You should be more empathetic with people who are addicted. It's addiction is a disease. Like the language is changing now because of who we're finding are now getting addicted to drugs. But it was always true. And this is my point. If we would address things equitably, if we would address things understanding that when it shows up in one small population, it's going to show up in the rest of the country. If we would care about each other's challenges, and truth is, if you're disconnected, you're not going to care till you hear somebody's story. And then you go, wow, she's a
Like an
mom like I'm a
individual,
mom. An
talking to an
individual
individual.
story.
Well, hard to
Exactly.
hate somebody when you do that. Yeah.
Yes, it changes everything because you realize their life is a lot like your life. Even though it's a different life, there are similarities. Wow, that's a person just like me. And I can imagine what I would do if I was going through that.
Yeah.
Let's stand together. Let's work together. And those types of mindsets, that's where the healing comes in, leads to the peace strategies that will cause us to choose to be neighbors, and then those same neighbors can now come to the table and write legislation that makes sense and is practical and is helpful for everyone in the nation, as opposed to it being helpful and practical only for certain populations.
Yeah. There's a lot of things I could go into there about what's just, and I think that a lot of people don't believe in it anymore, and I think that that's part of the intention is that it's easier for people to stay in control if they think you believe you're defeated. Like, why bother? And there's a lot of that apathy out there. And I was having a conversation with one of our partners, and it was about, people, they need to, not should or anything like that. They need to start treating these things like it's the civil rights era. Like, you have to take some risk. You have to get out there. You have to do things. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to do things you don't want to do, because otherwise you're saying, I'm happy with the scraps that the billionaires are willing to leave me.
Yeah. And we can't do
And I
that.
hate to I hate to say that to people because I understand. I've been there where I'm working so hard just to survive that I don't have time to do any advocacy or to fight or to go out and, argue for or against a candidate, it's, we're not in a good place. So I have this idea, if you could get people together in this, well, let's call it a peace circle, that we could, I'm just kidding. We could try a different venue. I think people are ready for that. I really do believe in the good side of humanity. I believe that the intolerance, as I call them, the intolerance, they just can't tolerate anyone that's different than them.
Right.
And unfortunately, a large number of those are billionaires, and they're funding these movements that are trying to get rid of DEI and say people that were helped through that program to get a job are unqualified,
Right.
and that the most qualified, that's not justice. And these intolerants have so much of the money that they're controlling the narrative right now. But people, if we could have the right movement and we could have the right leaders like yourself in the communities, that's where it's going to start. And then eventually that will turn into hopefully some better candidates. Um, Whether you agree with it or not, the things that Mom Donnie is doing in New York, maybe they work, maybe they won't, but he's doing what he said he was going to do. And I think a lot of people appreciate that. It may turn out to be a disaster. I don't think it will be. I think that it's been a long time since we had the justice of people making decisions for the greater good of everyone,
Hmm.
not just a big business or someone that's wealthy. So again,
Absolutely.
I love tangents, don't I? So
No,
sorry
you're
about
fine. You're fine. But I would say to Mayor Mamdani, who I pray for every single day, to keep reaching across to other groups because sometimes he's a little, you know, closed
yeah,
off
and I don't
and
disagree with that. I
got to
think he's
connect with others because some of those other groups that he's closed off from helped to get him elected. And so stay focused, Mamdani.
oh,
Stay
okay, let's say
focused.
I
Stay focused.
I
Bring in everybody.
we need to write him a letter,
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
communicate with him. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, Marquita, do you have any other final words, or we got plenty of time if you want to talk about anything else, or we can just say, let's get on with the weekend.
I do want to share one more thing, Brady. Thanks
Oh,
for
okay,
asking.
perfect.
I actually, there's an event this weekend that I'm leading at the historic church that my ministry stewards. So we have been made stewards over a church that was built by recently freed slaves in Gloucester, Virginia. The
Okay.
church is called Antioch. And so we're having tonight and tomorrow, we're having Antioch homecoming. But tonight, I have the privilege of leading a healing circle. The very thing we've been talking about, I have the privilege of leading a healing circle. And the work that we've been doing in Gloucester is, my ministry as we steward Antioch Church, which is the only historic building remaining in that region. And we've been working with an archaeological foundation called the Fairfield Foundation. And they've
Okay.
now been given stewardship over all these old plantations. There's all these old plantations that they are now stewards over. And they've been
Okay.
preserving the land. They've been doing that. But more than that, they've been bringing together the descendants of the enslavers and the descendants of those who were enslaved for reconciliation and healing. And I've been a part of those groups. And so tonight, our healing circle is bringing together people from that community whose ancestors were enslavers and whose ancestors were enslaved and working together in healing. And this is long term. Like tonight, I'm excited about tonight's healing circle, but this is long term. We meet together weekly to deal with some of
Right,
these
right.
issues of race and challenging, and we talk and we're honest with each other, we're patient with each other, and then when we get together in person at Antioch Homecoming and we get together MLK Day, we're able to do some in-person work. But the point I'm making is that a community has to commit to this long term. And you've got to realize that some things are going to make you a little bit uncomfortable, but most of it is going to heal your soul if you're really willing to connect and be involved. And so I want to invite other communities to be willing to have some tough conversations with some people who don't look like you so that your community at large can be better. Because things are happening in little old Gloucester County because of this work that the Archaeological Foundation, Fairfield Foundation, is doing with the historic Antioch Church and the ministry that's stewarding it, the Truth and the Spirit. There is some real work that's happening, and it's making a difference in the whole community.
You have you're leading some of the greatest projects I just really love that's a whole another podcast episode right there. Because think about the historics, like Antioch, there's a big battle there, but then there were other things that happened, in the Revolutionary War and everything. I mean, it's just I just love it. I love it. So how can people find out more about that? You want to throw out a website there or something?
Yes. So for what we're doing in Antioch, just antiochgloucester.org. Antiochgloucester.org.
Do
That's
you
the
spell
website to go to.
Gloucester?
Gloucester.
Yeah, I knew I couldn't remember how to spell it or I would have said that.
I'll actually pull
G
it up.
L O U C E S T E R. Okay.
Yeah, I'll pull it up so people can see it. And information about what we're doing there is always on that site. And the homecoming information about the event that we're having tonight and tomorrow, of course, is on that site. Videos from previous homecomings there, so you can see it in the corner, antiochgloucester.org. And so this is actually the picture of the church. This is where I'll be this evening. And then you go
Wow.
down, and there's the Antioch homecoming that we're doing tonight and tomorrow. In the Fairfield Foundation, I put a link there to their site because they're just doing amazing work in the region. And for me, what blesses me, being that they're an archaeological foundation, they could be just so we're just going to do science. We're just going to care about but they're like, no, this connects to the lives of people, and they're bringing in the descendants of slaves. They're bringing in Native Americans, like they're bringing in the descendants of the enslavers who owned those plantations. Like they're bringing
My
people to the
God.
table, and they don't have to do that. Like
That's
they're going the
encouraging
extra mile. You know.
that both these groups who are feel terribly wounded, uh, whether it's right or wrong, that you have, a group of it's going to be, white folks that are probably felt like a big population has hated them and they don't feel that it's fair. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. And then of course the group that is descendant of slaves and to deal with all of that economic, theft and how they were treated as human beings, but to have them come together. So let's focus on that they're coming together, and I don't see how anything bad could come out of that. I think it's only going to be good. You saved that for last. That is such a neat,
And
or
if
I
I could
mean,
just give a quick anecdote to just talk, just to show you like how powerful it's been. One of the descendants of an enslaver said, when we have these conversations, you guys talk about my great grandfather as a slave owner. Like that's the only thing he was, slave owner, slave owner. He was a father. He was a doctor. He was all these other things. And all you guys say is he's slave owner, he's slave owner, he's slave owner. And they were like, we see him as so much more than that. And then I shared the reason that happens because I'm actually not one of the descendants of the slaves of that region. My family was in a different region, but I steward the
okay,
church in that region, so I'm like a mediator. And so I said, well, the reason that happens is because the slaves were not allowed to have other areas of life. A slave could not be considered a mother. Her babies were taken from her. She couldn't be considered a wife. Her husband could be sold, and some weren't even allowed to marry. She couldn't have a profession. Like the descendants of the slaves only could see slavery, weren't allowed to have other aspects of life. And that led to an amazing discussion because now we're seeing things from each other's perspective. You're right. Your great grandfather was more than just a slave owner, and my great grandmother was more than just a slave. Now we're able to talk about what that looked like when their lives intertwined and the effects it had on the descendants and the effects it's having still.
yeah, yeah. I mean, if people are willing to come out and talk about it, it's definitely there. It lives inside them on both sides,
Absolutely.
and hopefully both sides will become one side. Um, that would
That's
be,
it.
even if it was just that one community, I
Yeah.
think that stuff matters so much. Those kind of efforts matter. And I think that if what I was saying earlier is that people really need to treat this like a civil rights era. We can call it whatever we want, but
Right.
that's the kind of thing where people are taking time out of their weekend or their night or their day, and they're putting some effort into it in order to do something that's
Yes.
really hard for people to do that because there's not a lot of trust. You don't understand, the other side because you didn't grow up in their communities. It's a total cultural difference. But the fact that there's enough people that are brave to have this happen is really encouraging. And so
It is.
I would encourage you to send us a couple pictures and we can post them.
I will. They've done DNA tests, and many of the whites and the blacks are
I'm
cousins.
not surprised at all. Not even a tiny bit. Uh,
Right.
Not even a tiny bit. So, oh my goodness. Well, Marquita, it has been a delight as always. I can't thank you enough for the work you do and for being part of Physic. You know, you're on a couple task forces and you started the Central Virginia Economic Initiative, and we'll have you back on soon to talk about that.
Awesome.
And any final parting?
No, thank you so much. I've enjoyed this time with you.
Thank you so much for. I know how busy you are, obviously, but have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, you too.
Okay.